and gentlemen, welcome to the Movie Trivia Schmoedown!
Hello, Internet, and welcome to Sip or Spill. I'm your host, Kiwi Jess, and today I am joined by the illustrious William Bibiani. How are you today, sir?
I'm very growl today. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited because you probably have one of the longest careers in the Schmoedown, and being able to talk to you about it and find out a lot of the behind the scenes or any of your favorite moments. That's going to be really exciting. I mean, I want to start from something that's quite recent. We know that we've recently filmed the Spectacular show, and you're going to be facing off against Shazam. Well, sorry,
we are
Shazam. You are Shazam. Sorry.
It'd be great if we faced off against Shazam. I would love it. Personally, my money would be on Shazam.
Yeah, right? King Arthur, but it's a mystery King Arthur.
It is a mystery King Arthur. Unfortunately, because of some practicalities involved in filming the finale, Griffin Newman is not available. And so there will be a mystery partner for King Kong to perform as King Arthur. There's still King Arthur. And I can't wait for everyone to see how that shakes out. I will tell nothing. I will reveal nothing. You'll get nothing out of me except all the answers to your questions.
I'm going to ask, because obviously you're known for your entrances. How hard was it coming up with your very last entrance for the Schmoedown?
Very difficult. I have a long list of ideas that I have had for various entrances I could do over the years in various contexts and various scenes and scenarios, and a lot of them that I didn't get to that'll make me very, very sad. And I remember when we finally confirmed that Brendan and I would indeed play it Spectacular, because it was all up in the air. No one knew for certain who was going to play until, a certain point. I was like, we have to do the biggest entrance ever. We have to make this huge. And I don't want to build it up too much, but the plan is to do the biggest entrance Shazam has ever had. That is the idea. That is the goal. That is what we are aiming for. Whether we pull it off, I cannot say, but it is what we're attempting, because we should go out with a bang. We absolutely have to. Win or lose, we want to put on a good show. And that is my goal.
I'm so excited to see what you guys do with it. Could you reveal any that you're not going to get a chance to do that you want to be like, look, this would have been really great to do?
There's so many. Hold on, let me see if I can find my actual list here.
You actually have, oh my god.
I have some. Unfortunately, when my computer died, I lost a long list of ones that I wanted to do that I never got to do. But I was able to recreate most of them. I was very happy this season. I got to do The Thing entrance with the flamethrowers. That made me really happy. The entrance I was going to do with Ethan Irwin if I had beat Brendan, and I was going to face Ethan earlier this year. I was going to do a Ferris Bueller's Day Off entrance, so they were going to call me, and then we would cut to me in my car, and I would just be like, they'll keep calling me. They'll keep calling me until I do an entrance. They make me feel guilty. Oh, this is ridiculous. Okay, I'll go. Wait, I'll go. Damn it. And then I did the whole bit. So I was going to do that. I really wanted to do... My fantasy one I had, and I wanted to do it actually last year, but we did so few in studio and in person shows that it wasn't practical. I had wanted to do a parody of Nicole Kidman's AMC promo. Let's see. I wanted to do. Oh, here's one I wanted to do. Here's one I wanted to do that I was really, really, really in love with, and we didn't have the time. it was right before my title match, my solo title match against Dan Murrell. I had my match where I think I'd beaten Roca and Ethan at the same time. And then I had to play Dan, I think it was 1 week after that. So it was very, very short. In terms of production schedule, very short, not a lot of prep time. And I didn't have time to shoot the entrance that I wanted, which was the writing was on the wall. We knew Critically Acclaimed as a team on the Schmodown was ending and that Shazam was going to be formed. We were already setting that up with some sketches with me and Brendan. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to recreate the opening title sequence of Siskel and Ebert, which, if you'll recall, is two critics, one of them like writing on his keyboard, one of them writing on his typewriter. They both submit their reviews. One of them like runs up to the theater where they're going to do the reviews. The other one takes a cab. One of those would be Whitney. One of those would be me. And there's a moment in the credits where I can't remember. I think it's Siskel. I could be wrong. One of them gets in a cab and the cab driver looks back at them and goes, "Hey," and that was going to be Brendan. And it was going to set up that Brendan was like insinuating himself into our whole thing. It would have been glorious. We did not have the time. And in fact, the one I ended up doing last minute at the end was actually maybe my least favorite entrance I ever did. It looked good, but it didn't really play. The timing of it was weird. And that was my Captain America sitting backwards on a chair. So, yeah. So you expected a big entrance. It was a funny idea. I didn't think it worked. Let's see. Oh, I really wanted to do one where I was doing Batman the movie, where, if you recall Batman the movie from the 1960s, there's this whole bit where he's got this big bomb. It's a big sphere with a fuse in it, like in a Looney Tune. Yes. And it's gonna blow up, and he's trying to find a place to throw it where it won't hurt anybody. And he runs down this alleyway, and it's a group of kids playing jump rope. Okay, I can't throw it there. He runs somewhere else, and there's a bunch of nuns walking around. He runs somewhere else, and there's like a brass band marching around. Finally, he runs down a pier, and he's going to throw it off a pier, and he looks down, and there's a bunch of baby ducks. And it was just going to be me running throughout the entire Schmodown set with the bomb, trying to throw it places, but like, oh, damn it, there's the wild berries. And oh, damn it, they're recording the Schmodown rundown, and I interrupt the show, that kind of thing. So I didn't get to do that. There was going to be a live show. There was an attempt for it to be a live show between me and Chance. It was going to be like the first match of a big tournament. And we weren't able to do it live. We ended up doing it in a studio. But what I wanted to do for that match in a live setting was going to treat it like dinner theater, where I come up onto the stage, and then the lights suddenly go out. And then when the lights came up, I was thinking Josh McCouga, but someone would be dead, and I would have to solve the mystery. And it would be someone in the audience. They'd help me solve the mystery with some clues. I didn't get very far into that concept because the plans changed. It was going to be in studio, and this wouldn't be the same thing. Let me try to think here. I never got to do the completion of my Alien, Predator, Terminator trilogy. And that one kind of bugs me. If I'd known we didn't have time to do that, I would have made the time this season, because we did one where it was me like going out of the camouflage like a predator, and then I did one where I burst out of Mark Riley's chest, which I'm very proud of. They did a great job putting that one together. Yeah, I really wanted to do a Terminator one. My fantasy was to do the bit in Terminator 2 where the T-1000 kind of like comes out of the ground, and it was going to be me. But it never quite worked out, and we never had the time for it. So that's another one. Oh, Jesus. I had a couple of ideas where I wanted to do a Spider-Man No Way Home thing, where it would either be or maybe it was going to be Endgame, but I was going to use a sling ring like they have in the MCU to bring in other members of the Quirky Mercs, or alternate reality version members of Shazam, which we had met in the alternate reality entrance that we had against the Family at the end of that tournament. So there's more, but those are the big ones off the top of my head. Yeah.
Because I was going to ask which was your least favorite, but you've already covered that.
Yeah, the Captain America one was a last minute thing, and it was a fun idea, but the delivery wasn't great. It kind of just stopped it dead. It wasn't my favorite overall. They did a really good job putting it together. Like, it looked right. It just, that one's on me. I didn't think it out well enough. My head wasn't in the game the day that we shot that, or that match, if you'll see. That match is one of my low points. Actually, I really stunk up the place in that match, and one of the ones I wish I could do over. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I mean that's true. Was there ever any time that you got told no for an entrance?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I had a lot of entrances that were told. Well, like I said, there's sometimes where we don't have time to shoot that, which is very practical. I had a lot of big ideas. We don't have time to shoot that. We don't have the money to do that. If there were props and things, generally speaking, there were things I had to provide myself. So there were a lot of times I really wanted to do. There was one time I really wanted to do this like Jekyll and Hyde thing back when I was still like a heel at the start of my career. I wanted to come out, drink a potion with like some dry ice in it, and then there was going to be a whole thing, and then it was going to have this elaborate Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde makeup. And I really wanted to do it, but I really wanted to make sure that it looked good. And if we could get the makeup that looked good, we'd want to really pay the makeup artist. And unfortunately, every makeup artist I talked to, even people who were like friends of friends and were going to give me a deal, their rates were just I couldn't afford it. I wish I could have. I would have happily given them that and more, but just I don't have that money right now, and it's all coming out of my. That would be me paying for that, and I just can't afford it right now. So there were times like that where it was usually because it was impractical. I don't recall a single instance in which I was ever told you're not allowed to do that. Like that's not a thing that's okay. I think there was a couple of times. There was a couple of times when I asked to incorporate other Schmoedown competitors, and I was told that we can't let you incorporate them because it won't make sense for their story. And then I was like, that's perfectly fair. I don't know where everyone's story was going. It's just an idea, and then we can bring someone else in, or the idea changed, and that was fine. But no, they were very, very cool. They were always very, very cool about giving me an opportunity to express myself creatively, and other people as well. Not everyone took them up on it, but I know I seem to be like the big entrance guy, but I got a lot of my inspiration from Breanne Chandler and Stacy, and I think they were the real trailblazers in that regard. Other people were doing the fun stuff, but I think they were the ones initially pushing it in more conceptual and ambitious directions, and so they were my big influences, and I definitely don't want their contributions to the game in general, but to that aspect in particular, to be overlooked, because they're legends for me. I loved everything that they ever did.
We do have a question. Brian wants to know if there ever was a Muppets entrance.
Oh my God, yes, there was. There absolutely was going to be. And thank you for bringing it up, because yes, I absolutely wanted to do a Muppets type entrance. I was in contact with some possible puppeteers to do a Muppets type entrance. It was a timing thing. They were like not available when we were going to film, because it was around tournament season, and it was pretty rigid scheduling, and so they weren't available. I said, we'll get back to it another time, and then it just never worked out again. I did really want to do a puppet entrance. In fact, this is true, and I've mentioned this before. Early on, before everyone had a manager, back when managers were an optional thing some people had, I had nearly convinced Christian. I don't know if he'll remember this or not, but I had told him, Christian, I have this idea. What if me and Whitney or Brendan or whoever was, because there was initially there was a moment where it seemed like instead of Brendan starting Shazam, he might join a faction with us, but that was like a day that we talked about that. There was a moment where I'd almost gotten it okayed to have our manager be a puppet. And it would have been the best thing ever. I would have loved it. I would have loved it. I had such ideas for that puppet. It was going to be kind of like a monster puppet. It was going to I really wanted to start at some point, it never worked out, obviously, but I would have loved to have started a faction called the Monster Party. And it would have been a lot really horror centric, and kind of we'd be like the Munsters or the Addams Family. I had a lot of fun ideas in that regard. We never went in that direction, but I had ideas for it if it ever happened. But yeah, the idea of having a manager who was a puppet was definitely something that I pushed for. And if a few different things had happened, a few matches had been won or whatever, could have happened. But like many things in the Schmoedown, there are a ton of alternate realities where if this match goes this way, the entire history of the Schmoedown changes, the entire storyline changes, someone's character work changes, and You have all of these plans for if something goes a certain way or it doesn't, and you just have to accept that you're going to make 8 different plans and only one of them is going to go forward.
Mhm.
Like, for example, you talked about entrances I didn't get to use. Earlier this season, me and Brendan played, and the winner played Ethan Irwin, and then if the winner beat Ethan Irwin, either I or Brendan would have played Sam Levine, and I think it would have been a great match, and I think we could have taken him, but it is what it is. We were filming all of those matches over the course of about 2 days. It was a very tight group of matches, so we knew that we needed to. We wanted to do a big entrance if we faced Sam. And we knew there was at least a 1/3 chance, like a 33% chance that Ethan would play, and neither of us did. But if either of us did, we wanted to be ready. So we had developed this entrance idea where it would be like we had hired Sam Levine to do a video on Cameo, wishing us luck. To I hope you win that big match, buddy. I'm sure you're gonna do great.
Yes.
And Sam was totally up for it. It was a fun idea, but like you plan for it, and then just we didn't beat Ethan. What are you gonna do?
Mm.
So those are that idea gone. It happens. You get used to it after a while. It's a bummer the first few times, and afterwards it's just
I imagine
maybe some other day, and then no, because there won't be another show after this. But
Yeah, I imagine that's pretty hard to let go of sometimes, especially if there's an idea you're kind of like married to as well.
Yeah, there's some bummers out there, but I'm actually really proud of what we were able to accomplish, so it's hard to be upset,
I mean, 9 seasons, you can't really scoff at that, to be fair.
No, I'm very, very fortunate to have been able to play as much as I did. I'm very fortunate to have had the career that I had, especially as Shazam. And I was very fortunate that I was able to do so many entertaining sort of bits of artistic expression that I felt were really me trying to add my own flavor to the Schmodown. And I think there's so many different types of people who played the Schmodown, and I think they all added their own personality to it, their own interests and their own style. And that I was able to add some of mine is, you know what? I don't usually like speaking highly of myself, but I'm not going to go overboard, but I'm proud of what I did.
You should be.
I'm genuinely proud of what I did there. And so as much as I'm sad that it is over, I did my best. And I think I did some stuff that's pretty cool. So, yeah.
I mean, because, for as long as you've been in it, you've got to do, I'm guessing, excuse me, like several different roles. You've gone from heel to face. Do you miss being a heel at all?
No, I don't miss it at all.
Okay.
I didn't realize that I was going heel when I did my first entrance. I really didn't understand how wrestling works. I'm still kind of hazy on it.
Yeah,
I knew there was showmanship involved. That's what excited me because I was a theater kid. And so what I wanted to do was my first entrance when I came out in the Hannibal Lecter mask and I burst through the chains and I fought against the security guards trying to keep me. I wasn't saying I am a bad guy. What I was trying to say is I'm the fun entrance guy. And early on, Christian convinced me that it would be cool if he just kept that consistent. And I tried. And I did some fun entrances with it. But what I found was that, I don't particularly like talking smack. And if you'll look at me attempting to talk smack, there's always this slight air of like unconvincingness to it that I think was me trying not to go full heel because we're playing a version of ourselves. Some of us were wise enough to come up with a brand new character that's very differentiated from themselves. Like Lon Harris, he did the Professor. That's a part of Lon. If you know Lon, like he knows a lot about movies, but that's not Lon. And what was it? The slacker. What did he call himself again? The other version of Lon. Why am I blanking on that? That's so ridiculous. That's him when he's being kind of laissez-faire, but that's totally a character, completely exaggerated. And that gave him the freedom to do something completely different. And while I was the Beast, I was still also William Bibiani, and I don't think I was able to do that very effectively. And I found ultimately that also
the delinquent.
The delinquent. Thank you. God, that was
there we go.
Nuts. So
Yeah.
embarrassing.
Chat's great for that.
We stopped filming the Schmodown, and the day afterwards, my memory was like, I can stop remembering things now. This is great, and I just don't remember anything.
Get rid of it. Get rid of it all.
But I struggled to do that. I didn't do a very good job of that, and I found it was actually distracting during matches. And I think that's a part of the reason, not the only reason, but I think it's part of the reason why my first season was only one match, which is why I wasn't up for Rookie of the Year. I mean, I was, but like I was never going to win it. But yeah, I had one match right towards the end of the season, and then I did a little cameo at Spectacular, but that was it. And then second season, I just couldn't catch a break. I had that really embarrassing match against JTE where I just crashed and burned. And fair enough, honestly, it was just questions I didn't know. What are you going to do? I happened to get a couple of categories I wasn't like an expert on. And the sad thing was I studied. The joke was Bibbs doesn't know scores and soundtracks. Give him scores and soundtracks. I studied those for like 5 years and it never came up again. I studied so hard in scores and soundtracks and it never came up again. It was so hilarious. Yeah, I would win a couple of matches, then I'd lose a match, and then I could never get the momentum going until I finally just started veering away from being the bad guy. And then I finally talked to Christian and he was just like, you're more, I forget what he used. It's like a word for like a comedy face. You're just like a funny guy. And I'm like, that's kind of what I am. Yeah, that's more my vibe. I know it makes more sense to try to play me up as a bad guy, but it wasn't quite working. If I had gone on a win streak, I probably would still be a heel because it was working, but it wasn't. And so it wasn't super comfortable. And so I moved on. And honestly, I was having more fun and I was getting better at the game because I was able to focus more on the game because the persona I had in the Schmodown, which, I'm performing, but it's more me performing than it is me being someone else performing. Yeah, exactly. So
because there's heels that I'm sure in this competition that it fires them up to be a heel. It helps drive them through a match. Yeah,
I admire it. I admire it. That's so great that you can do both things. That you can operate on an incredible level of talent while also putting on a show, and they fuel each other.
Yes.
I struggled with that. I was never great at that. And that's fine. I accept that. It's a bummer because I think it probably would have made my persona a little bit more clean. Mm-hmm. I feel like I was constantly finding myself in the Schmodown, and well, that's not the worst thing ever. It made me a little hard to define sometimes, and I think that might have affected rooting interest, but whatever. Who can say? But yeah, no. It is what it is. But I finally found my voice, and I just kind of just was me. And yeah, we found some weirdos who totally supported that, and that was great.
I think this whole community is kind of a bunch of weirdos if you really break it down, to be honest.
Because,
yeah, I mean, it must have been a sigh of relief for you then when you finally were able to transition to more of that face sort of role. It was probably more of oh, thank goodness, I can just relax into.
It was the shift from critically acclaimed to Shazam that made that happen. And I remember we were doing all these scenes setting up, me and Brendan getting closer, me and Whitney getting further apart, breaking up. And everyone assumed there was some sinister angle to it. The kid was going to be the stalker in some kind of Lifetime original movie or something. He was going to destroy that. This actually followed us throughout the entire thing. There were certain people who I would see on Facebook or the Reddit or whatever, or in the comments, and they would always be I keep waiting for the kid to turn heel.
Yes.
I keep waiting for him to be just pure evil. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to say it was never discussed, but it was never discussed. It never happened. It was never a thing. And
because I know even the Schmodown storyline a little bit earlier this season with you and him, people I know that the conversation was, oh, here we go. It's finally happening. He's going to turn heel. And I know that was really starting to build momentum until we obviously got the announcement that it was ending. And I know that a lot of people were really interested to see how that would work.
Yeah, again, there's always different alternate reality possibilities that could have happened. But I think the fact that me and Brendan finally found our biggest successes together as a face team really solidified that. And then, who knows, if we'd gone on another 3 seasons, maybe I would have gotten bored and maybe brought back the Beast or something, or like that as a fun seasonal arc or something like that. But, that would all have been up to Christian, who can say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering how that would work if he did turn heel in singles, how it would work in teams. Because I was like, that's going to be a really weird dynamic because you can't really have a
No.
team where one's heel, one's face. It really doesn't play
I see.
well.
I initially thought that would be a fun idea, and then Christian had to explain to me, well, that's the worst idea in the world, and he was right. He was right. However, we saw bits of that though in the Anarchy tournament, which is one of my favorite things we ever did. I was initially not happy about it because it was yet another example of critically acclaimed had just gotten 2 wins under our belt. We were on our way to potential title shot, and then we had to break up for 6 months. And it was like, no, every time it was just we just couldn't catch a break. It was just timing. It's just what it is, what it was. But the actual thing itself was one of the best things we ever did, because at that point, everyone's persona and everyone's relationships to other characters was pretty clear, and forcing people to work together who'd never worked together before, playing with different dynamics, was, I think it's seriously may have been the best idea Christian ever had, aside from creating the Schmoedown with Mark. It was really, really fun idea. I kind of wish we'd had an opportunity to do a sequel to it at some point, but that would have been cool. But yeah, that was a real hoot, and I got to work with Emma Fyffe and Matt Nost, and they were really, really fun. And Whitney got to work with Mark Edward Hoyk as the Self-Righteous Brothers. That was fun, and we got Corruption out of that, and it was just so many wonderful types of stuff. And we got a few people who seemed mismatched. Like Ben was like pure heel at the time, and then he was teamed up with Mark Riley, and then Mark had turned Ben more face for a while. Nobody was truly convinced. I remember when he turned heel again, everyone's like, there we go.
Yeah.
But like, it was a good arc. It was a good arc. There was just enough where you're just like, maybe he's a good guy now. He's a good guy. Like,
it's the same thing with Brandon Hanna being the Hornet. So everyone's like, I don't buy it. Come on.
I love Brandon so much. I've been wanting to work with him directly, and we never found our way into the same faction before. And I loved working with him this last season. He's so much fun, and he's really knowledgeable. You know, he never quite had he had a good title run. He did. He didn't make it to the end, but like he had a good run there. And he was so creative, and he was so gung-ho about changing his persona, and he was totally committed to it all the way. He did so much fun stuff. That he was one of my most. I honestly think this last season is just this wonderful evolution of Brandon as a character. And I think this season, and I realize I'm part of his faction, so I might sound a little biased, but I genuinely believe he was one of the most entertaining people to watch this season. And if you watch his match with Barbarian, they were fantastic together. That whole bit where like Barbarian was like stroking Elvis, and then Brandon just kept doing that too. That was just a thing that happened. Right. He was just so open to like fun, like cheerful improv, and God, that was great. He's one of the best. I love that guy.
Yeah, I just know in the after show space, everyone's like, "Don't buy it. It's not like you don't just turn like that." I
was really hoping he'd get a couple more matches to do some scene work, and there was one of the Schmoedown pundits who said they would never believe that Brandon was going face until like he apologized to her directly. Who was that? But there was someone who did, and I kept trying to engineer it at a Brandon match, but they were never together at the same time when a camera was around. And I really wanted to get that scene together, or maybe do it in an entrance or something, and it just never worked out. But yeah, it would have been great. He was fully committed to it. It was going to be such a delight. He was
so it wasn't a bit. It wasn't him trying to, because there was all these theories about he's trying to infiltrate the quirky mercs and sort of poison them from the inside.
Look, it's who can say what would have happened. I mean, if he had won, he would.
Point of view.
That's it, Jill. We really wanted to actually apologize to Jill, like in a nice moment, and it just never worked out. But it's another one of those things where this is all Christian's baby. This is all his storylines. And so he might have had ideas that I'm not privy to. And maybe somewhere down the line, Brandon would have gone heel again. But I do know that we never talked about it when we were working with him and trying to prepping him, trying to study the quirky merc way. Working on character work.
Quirky merc way.
Oh, sure there is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there absolutely is. We have different styles of doing everything, and I've talked to a lot of different players in the Schmoedown, and some of the things that they do to study are things that I do, and some of them are not. But yeah, we definitely had a particular way of training at the Quirky Mercs. It was kind of twofold. I was mostly responsible for doing the training when it comes to like writing questions and doing test matches. And I was a big proponent of you train for a marathon to do a sprint.
Yes.
So I wanted to make sure that they were constantly, everyone who was training with me, not everyone took me up on it, but most of them did. Every time we did training, we would put together real feeling matches, but I would always make sure that the questions were actually harder than they were in the actual match. And one of the reasons was you'll be ready for the hard questions.
Yes.
But the other reason is that when you're in the match and you've been training to answer 3 and 5 pointers in round 1, when you finally hear the questions they're actually going to give you in round 1, because they're usually 1-point questions. They're, questions people in the audience can get, even if you're not a big movie fan. You're going to hear that and you're going to say, "Oh my God, I got this."
You relax.
And it's such a relief. And so you can relax. And that really went along with Coy's philosophy. And Coy's philosophy was he was a huge booster. And I love this about Coy. He was ultra positive all the time. He knew that we are all people who know a lot about movies, but we're not necessarily, sports stars or like people who perform constantly. We need to be reminded that we're good at this because insecurities can come up on even the best of days. So he was always super great about that, but he was also had his own strategies. And I'm not going to speak out of turn. I'll let him talk about this if he wants to, but he had his own strategies about how to basically in the middle of a match, change your perception of time so that it seems like, oh God, I only have 10 seconds. And he would be like, here are some mental exercises you can do to make 10 seconds feel like a minute. And it helped a lot. It really did. I won several matches based on that. So he was really, really great. We worked well together. The whole faction worked well together. A lot of people would like join in to do practice matches, even if they weren't part of the division that we were practicing for. So yeah, we had our own vibe, and I'm sure every other faction did too. I was never on any other faction, so especially at least not when they were real, when they were like really like treating it like a sport. So I don't know what it was like. I was actually always curious. I was like, what do the usual suspects do?
I mean, you can talk about it now because
I can now, but at the time, now it's too late for that to be helpful. I'm just sort of, I would be curious, because the Usual Suspects had an incredible group. Like, for example, they all did, but like for example, the Usual Suspects, you had Sam Levine running the joint. He's one of the greatest who ever played. Rachel Cushing it's my understanding, helped a bit. Like, I don't know how much, but like also one of the greatest to ever play. And they also had wonderful people on their faction. I'll bet they had great study sessions, and I'm very curious what their strategies were.
Oh, I imagine. Especially seeing how Sam's been doing in the Schmodown this season after having such a long hiatus.
I'm
terrifying.
Amazed. I'm amazed.
Utterly terrifying.
I'm legitimately amazed at how good Sam is at this to this day. And his match against Marisol is the most. It used to be the most perfect match we ever had. Was the match between Andrew DiMolanta.
51-50.
And was that fit? Well, actually, that was a great match. But actually, I don't know. Like, there's that match. There's also his match against Joseph Scrimshaw.
Oh.
And in both of those cases, it really wasn't. I think he went perfect on both. But in both of those cases, like, no one really did anything wrong. It was just who was more right. And okay, that's what it was. In the Scrimshaw match, both of them got the answer right, but DiMolanta's answer was more right. And so they ended up giving him the point. When it came to Damon, he wasn't like wrong. He just kind of ran out of time.
Yeah.
He was basically an endurance match, and it was just a matter of wearing him down. And that's something we practiced a lot because we were like, Andrew, you're so damn good at this. We need to make sure you're ready to go the distance. And that training, I think, really, really helped. So those were really, really big. But yeah, Sam and Marisol, not a single question missed. That's and I'm playing along. And everyone's playing like we all missed like one, right? Like at least one. And like, how the hell did they do that? Like it's just
it must have been insane to watch in studio as well.
It was
because like the energy I imagine in studio is so different to watching it the way we do as fans.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be the one to actually like point out they were all just kind of stunned. It was like a big moment, and afterwards, while they're doing all this stuff, I kind of walked up and was like, "You guys know that neither of you missed a question, right? And that's like never happened before." And they were like, "Whoa!" So like, yeah, it's just those things where you don't even fully realize the impact of it. And yeah, that was one of the most astounding matches I've ever watched. I still think the most astounding match I ever watched was, I think it was the first match. It was Rachel Cushing against Mike Kalinowski, where it was this absolute monster back and forth, and it ended up going into sudden death, and it ended up being like one letter off in like the name of a Star Wars vessel. And then Rachel became like then she became double belted that day, but she became an Inner Geekdom champion that day for the first time. And that was a culmination of a whole like career spent, fighting for that belt. And it was just absolutely inspirational. And we were all just absolutely stunned by it. You just feel the energy in the room that day. That was real special. That was awesome.
Yeah. No, I imagine, yeah, Sam Levine terrifies me as a competitor. He's just, especially when it was announced he was coming back from the break, everyone was sort of like, okay, he could probably be a little bit rusty, and he just proved right out the gate.
It's interesting. Everyone assumes ring rust is going to be a thing, and then because the thing is, like, people don't just come back to the Schmoedown anymore and be like, "Yeah, I'll play a match." Like, no, they know what they're getting into if they've played before. So you saw,
I mean, especially at that level as well.
Yeah, at that level. So
you're not like played a couple of matches.
Mark Hanopik took years off and then just destroyed Don Depani. I took the belt back.
Yeah,
I think Smets's return was obviously a huge deal. So like, not everyone's going to be able to do that. There is always an element of luck because it's based on the questions you get. But yeah, it's been really impressive to see Sam return and just kill it. And I regret not being able to get a rematch against him, because it was that match, and it was a singles tournament match with me and Sam Levine that I lost barely. Last question, I lost. I had him on the ropes. And that was the tournament that got him the belt. That was the thing that sent him on his path to stardom. And I remember at the end of that match, I was doing my interview, and I said, and I stood by it then, and I was right, I send Sam forth as my avatar to win all the belts, to do to become the biggest success ever. So what I am saying is that Sam's career is thanks to me. And you're welcome, Sam.
You wouldn't be here without you.
And I was always mad. I get it. It was totally a coincidence. I'm sure it wasn't intentional, but I was still annoyed that like I was on my way to that rematch to play Sam for the belt. And that was when he decided now was the time to retire. And then I ended up playing Andreyko again for the belt. And that was a great match. I love that match. Mark Andreyko was wonderful. And we did that wonderful X2 X-Men United promo together.
That's right.
I loved that. That was fun. But yeah, it wasn't the same as playing Sam again. And I really regret not being able to go one-on-one against Sam ever again. That was a bummer. So I would have liked that if he ever wants to like do an impromptu movie trivia challenge in an alleyway somewhere. I'll be there, like in a Street Fighter tournament. But like other than that, yeah, it's what can you do?
I really hope there are just back alley matches with Schmoedown going forward that you guys if you guys run into each other, like unexpectedly. There really should be a rule that you guys have to then just have an impromptu Schmoedown match if you just run into each other randomly.
I had this idea once that there was going to be like a Schmoedown Underground where the questions would be like 20 times harder. And yeah, it's just like many ideas that never really went anywhere. But like, I thought it would have been fun to just like, let's just film this in an alleyway by the garbage cans, like make it look real cinema verite. But yeah, it didn't work out.
I mean, speaking of things that you obviously got to miss out on, any like regrets, anyone that you wanted to play that you never got a chance to?
Yes, I have regrets. My biggest regret is never being able to defeat Dan Murrell in any meaningful capacity. I was able to knock him out of a free for all once, and that was a big day because I knocked him out. Was it him, Ethan? I think it was Collins, and I want to say Andreyko, and I did not get. It's funny because I knocked that whole team out. That was a gigantic group of people, and I always thought it was fun. That I think it was Jacob who got nominated, who got picked as MVP, like an MVP or like a special recognition for knocking me out. And I thought that was like a real honor. I was like, wait a minute, I knocked all those guys out, but the real difficult thing was knocking me out.
Yeah.
I can only be so upset about losing that award. That's actually an honor in and of itself.
Mhm.
So I was happy to do that, and I think Dan even just said, "Congratulations, Bibbs," and I'm like, "You finally did it." And I'm like, "I didn't do a damn thing." Dan destroyed me in our first solo match together. It was the match we had against. There was a triple threat between me, Dan, and Brendan.
Mhm.
Was an incredibly close match. Each of us only missed one question. It just didn't work out. So I'm proud of how I did in that match. I just lost. What are you going to do? And then, of course, the Founding Fathers was the only team ever to knock out Shazam,
Mhm.
and that was a rough match. We learned a lot that day, though, and I think we became a better team because of it. But I was like, I want to play them again. I want to beat Dan once in my life. I want to beat Dan, no, and he's a great guy. Like I don't begrudge him it or anything like that. He's legitimately brilliant at movie trivia and a lot of other things. So, it's just a sort of thing like it never happened. So that one was kind of a bummer. And but other than that, I guess I would have liked once to have won Free for All outright, but the odds are against you no matter what you do, just
Oh,
because
yeah.
there's that many people and there's so many X factors. So that's just
And you
life.
never
Like,
know
I'm
what
not
kind
really
of
upset.
question you're gonna get. You
You
get
never
just
know.
the one question, and it could be the difference between you staying or
That's what it
being
was.
out.
It was me forgetting that Allison Janney was in American Beauty that cost me Free for All and Free for All 3. And I will never forget Allison Janney's name again for the rest of my life.
There
And the
you
thing is
go.
that I didn't know who she was when I first saw American Beauty. That was like my introduction to Allison Janney. I didn't know like how amazing she was until I saw her and other stuff afterwards. So I don't think of her as the American Beauty actress. And so
No.
that was just me. My brain didn't come to the right place in time. And maybe if I'd had a bunch of repeats, I could have got there, but who can say? But yeah, that's life. What are you going to do? I can only be so upset about that. Dan was my white whale. Dan was like, I just really want to play Dan one time. I just want to get him. But a lot of people have that. A lot of people have that with Dan. So it is what it is, and there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, I mean that's why he's the GOAT. That's why
He
we have
is.
this GOAT conversation as we do
Yeah.
with Shazam being the team's GOAT.
I don't know how we stand on that. There's so many different criteria on that. I'm honored to be in the conversation. That's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys, taking the belt earlier was sort of the solidifying moment for. I mean, and also talking about yourself, especially in that sort of capacity, is always a little bit difficult. That you don't want to buy into the hype too much. I imagine
I don't know if there is that much hype. I mean, I guess we did well, and I'm very proud of our record. Our record is better than any other team's record. I can't deny that. I can't pretend that's not a thing. But I feel like when it comes down to like who's the greatest of all time, it's not necessarily about wins. Sometimes it's about the way that these competitors, these idols, these heroes, whatever you look at, the way they make you feel. And I remember watching, I watched the Patriots and like they were bad guys. So I'm like, get him. You got to defeat him eventually, right? Let's get him.
Yeah.
So like they didn't really inspire me, but they were great. They were a lot of fun. But I remember feeling like inspired watching the Shire Wolves. Like they were not only great, they were really legitimately great. They beat me. They beat Who's the Boss. They beat a lot of great teams.
Yeah.
But I really felt like they were not the face in terms of that they were a face team, although they were, but I really felt like they were the face of the league there for a bit. And it was really like a moment we could really be proud to be in the league, like especially proud when certain champions represent us. And that was a really good time because like they should be the face of the league. They're amazing. They put in the work. They're super entertaining. They're wonderful human beings. They know way more about movies than most people. They're genuinely inspiring to watch them go out there and just put on a great show and kill it every single time. And so I still think that there is an incredibly wonderful argument to be made that the Shire Wolves are the GOAT team. But that's me, and maybe I'm too close to it to see. Maybe I'm too close to just the Schmoedown in general to be able to say that. But
I mean, you're a major part of it. You can't not be close to it, really, can you?
No, I guess I can't. That's fine. It is what it is. But yeah, that's I have my own perspective, and the perspective of someone who makes a thing is always different from someone who is on the outside. And oftentimes, I mean, listen, I'm a critic. Like, that's my job, is to
Yeah.
be on the outside looking in, sharing my observations as someone who doesn't have a deep personal connection to the people who made it or the individual product, and can actually say, hopefully, some things that might have eluded even them.
Mhm.
So I value the input from people watching the show. I do. Sometimes it's presented very rudely, and sometimes when it's presented very rudely, I can go, well, screw you too, and then I can go off.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm even just like, okay, you were rude, but that's a fair point. Like, and even then I have to be like, okay, I'll have to think about that and try to find a way to make that better in the future. But anyway, I forgot where I was going with this. Like, I am close to it. I admit that. What are you gonna do?
I mean, okay, so I love Brendan as a competitor, and
Me too.
you guys as Shazam are incredible. In fact, I watched, because I only came into this community a year ago, so I'm still very fresh to it. And I remember watching Shazam, and I was staring at Brendan, and I was like, where do I know this kid from? Like, I was trying to place him, and it wasn't until I think my third or fourth match of watching you guys, I was like, he's in The Guest, a movie that I
Yep.
absolutely adore. And for the longest, I couldn't pull it. I could see his face, and I could see the scenes he was in. Could my brain correlate the two? No. And I can
Yeah.
understand how, for you guys as competitors, sometimes you can see the movie and you're like, good. I can see the person, I can see the movie, I can see the scene. Because I was staring at someone and I could see the scenes in my head, and I was still like, what movie is this
It's interesting.
guy in?
I actually had that exact moment when I played it was my first title defense as a singles champion, and my only title defense, when I played Roka. And it came down to my final question was, who played the villain? They named the character. Who played the villain in The Man from U.N.C.L.E.? And I knew who it was. I know their face. I've seen them in other movies, and I think I didn't have enough repeats or something, and I just couldn't pull Elizabeth Debicki. And I think she'd just recently been in Widows. She was like really on the rise at the time. And there was one of those situations where I'm like, people are going to tell me you should have said something. And I'm like, if I say another name, which I did, and I think I ended up saying Rosamund Pike just to make it seem like I was trying. But like, I knew that was wrong. I know that's not Elizabeth Debicki. I know exactly who it is. I know exactly what name is wrong. I just can't remember the name that's right.
Yeah.
So guessing might seem like a good strategy, except I know enough to know the guess is guaranteed to be wrong. So what am I supposed to do in that situation? And so you do whatever you can. But yeah, Brendan was in The Guest, and it's funny because as a friend of Brendan, like a close friend now of Brendan Meyer, I can't review his movies anymore.
Oh, I imagine.
Because it would be a conflict of interest. I can't. But like, if you look, before I knew him, before we worked together in the Schmodown, I had reviewed The Guest out of Sundance, and I had called it one of like the best films of that year. I love that.
Oh, good.
It was very, very cool to be able to work with. Like, hey, you were in that movie. I thought was so kick-ass. But ever since I started working with him, I started talking about it less, just because it could be seen as a conflict of interest, and theoretically it would be. So I can't talk about it anymore, even though I love that movie.
But I mean, you loved it before you started working.
I did, but
so
you just want to. You want to avoid. You don't want. That's true. And I'm mentioning it now because I can give you like the full context. But generally speaking, you want to avoid even the appearance. It's just not worth it. So there are plenty of other people who love The Guest. It's not like that movie doesn't have champions. I just don't talk about it as much because I don't think it would be appropriate.
I think most people that watch The Guest then champion The Guest. I haven't ever recommended it to a single person that's come back. I don't know about that one.
It's a well-liked film, and that's all there is to that. So yeah.
I mean, so obviously Shazam's such a great team, but if you could have been on a team with anyone else in the league, do you have anyone that you were like, oh, it would have been really cool to team up with them, see how they would have gone?
Rachel Cushing.
Oh,
Rachel Cushing was someone I always wanted to play. I always wanted to play with them. I never got to play them in singles, except for like being in a free-for-all together. We only had the one match against each other in teams, but absolute one of the best in the Schmodown who ever played it. And especially at the time when they were still active, my bigger weaknesses were in the Inner Geekdom division, and so I thought that we could have really complemented each other really well. There are others as well. Like there was always this possibility, for example, that something would happen and Shazam would have to break up. Like, let's say, for example, Brendan's a working actor, for example. Let's say he picked up a big movie or a show or something and was unavailable for a year, was I just stopped playing? No, there are definitely people I would like I would kill to play with Marisol. Like I would kill a lot to play with Marisol, for example. Like that would have been really, really cool. And I know
would have loved to
Marisol.
see those entrances as
Oh
well.
my god, Marisol is a really underappreciated performer, not just competitor. I think people appreciate that. If you get a chance to see, if anyone watching this hasn't seen the Meryl Streep match that we played, she did the entire bit in character as Miranda from The Devil Wears Prada, and it's the funniest damn thing I've ever seen in the Schmodown. She's so talented. I really wish, and I know if it had gone on longer, there would have been more opportunities. I really wish they'd had more opportunities to be funny, because they were so busy being intimidated, because they were. It just made sense. But yeah, they were hilarious. And we could have done such fun things together, for example. But there's a lot of people. Like, there's a bunch of really brilliant competitors. Chance is a really wonderful guy, and I really would have liked to have played with him. He's another person who takes it as seriously as I do. So that would have been a real treat. God, I'm trying to think. There's so many. We talked a bit about Brian Chandler and I toyed around with the idea of like, what if we were a team? And that would have been really, really fun. Nothing came of it because that's just life, but like it was a possibility we'd like entertain because we both would have enjoyed it. But yeah, there's tons of people I would have loved to have played with in some capacity or another.
Because was there ever anything that you got pitched in the Schmodown that you went, ooh, don't know about that, or like, no, not happening?
There were a couple. I can't think of anything in particular. There were a couple of like story elements where I was just like, I don't know if I can give you what you need, but I don't recall anything too specific. I occasionally would push back a little bit and say, I don't think I do it like that, but could I do it like this?
Okay.
And I think that would be more convincing coming from me. And usually it was okay. I think maybe once or twice they decided not to do it. But I will say this, you know, I respect Christian's storytelling a lot. And I don't know if he always knew that, because I would ask him a ton of questions and I would ask him to clarify things and I would suggest changes. And that's just how I work. I wanted to collaborate in order to make sure that the thing became as good as it possibly could.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I know it's his show. And if he tells you to do something, you either say, I can't do that. And if that's the end of that conversation, then it is. If you can't play anymore, or like your storyline would be over as a result, so be it. But I do trust him to tell a good story. And so at the end of the day, you know, he suggests something, there you go. The only time I was like super hesitant at first was when he suggested that Whitney and I break up and that I start a team with Brendan, because Whitney and I are very, very close friends. And this was still at a time in the Schmodown where the majority of teams were people who worked together, who would sort of come to the show and promote their stuff. Like there was Team Rotten Tomatoes, like that kind of thing. So Whitney and I, we still host podcasts together. We've been doing it for over 10 years. And it made sense for us to be together because we both know a lot about movies, and we did really, really well. I think we played 6 matches, and then I'm trying to remember. We never lost. We every single match, critically acclaimed one, we won by knockout. And that's like 4 matches. I think it's still a record. I think it's still a record or close to it. We did really, really well. I was very proud of how we did, but Christian was right. We never caught on. And I think a big part of that was timing. Every time we were about to do well, something got in our way. Like we just happened to lose in a tournament, or anarchy happened, and we just never picked up any momentum. The fans never really got a chance to get behind us. And so it just never clicked. And he was just like, let's just split you guys up and do a different thing. And me and Shazam worked out great. It took Whitney a while to find a good partner that like really complemented him well. And I think one of my big regrets about this season is that I'm glad they're playing in the Spectacular, but the ruling class is a really fun team.
That's I love them so much.
Kai is such a cool guy. He's so funny, and he's such a great heel. He's absolutely hilarious. And him and Whitney together, I love it. I love that there's a lot of queer representation in that team. That's awesome too. Like they're really smart. Like they're really, really great. They definitely have the potential, if the show kept going, to become champions. Like I wouldn't be shocked if it was in the cards for them. And that's true for a lot of teams this season, actually. I thought the teams division was really shaping up for
it was really heating up.
There's a lot of good teams putting together this year. So I'm bummed that Whitney finally kind of like me, like kind of like found his own voice with ruling class, but it was right before the show ended, and what can you do? But yeah, I'll say this. I'm going to say this over and over again, and I hope he hears it. Christian, you were right. That was a great idea to split up critically acclaimed and start Shazam and let Whitney find. It took Whitney a while to find, I think, the right partner, but it was the best idea for everybody. And I'm really, really glad I listened to you. And even if I sometimes pushed back, it wasn't because I didn't trust you. It's because I wanted to make sure I understood what the hell you were talking about, because I don't understand wrestling. And I wanted to make sure that I could give you the best thing that you and the show could have. So I want to say thank you for all the cool stuff that you've done. If you're watching this, and if you're not, okay, this is a weird moment. But if anyone's listening, Christian was great. I have a ton of respect for Christian and the way that he handled so many aspects of the show. And yeah, I do trust him when it comes to stuff like that. And I hope I didn't push back too much, because I really didn't mean to. But what are you going to do?
I mean, the best ideas, though, are the ones that sort of sit well with you. And I think those are the ones that you're most comfortable with, I think, are the ones, like, for example, you going from heel to face, because you were so comfortable. And I think that's been the best transition for you. So it's natural to ask questions.
It is natural to ask questions. And sometimes you honestly don't have the perspective that the person running the thing has. It's like Mark Hamill, when like he saw the script for The Last Jedi and he was like, is this a Luke Skywalker thing? I don't know about that. But then he makes the movie and the movie's perfect. Like, so it's like, you know, you trust. He could have said no. He could have like been a thing, but he was like, no, I trust the director's vision. And it was a fantastic arc for him, and it really, really worked great. So you just sort of like, okay, this is not my baby. This is not my show. I have some responsibility for making sure I do my part of it as well as I possibly can. But yeah, it's Christian's thing. So I want to make sure I do Christian and the rest of the crew proud. So.
Oh, I imagine. Actually, I don't imagine you have done that. You absolutely have done that.
Well, I hope so.
Okay, so I want to go way back. First ever Schmoedown match. Run me through what you were thinking in the lead up to it, because it's such a weird concept. I know, because I've had to explain to people in my real life what this is, and there's always a really interesting conversation that follows it. So I mean, competing in it must be a whole other thing as well. Yeah. So what was it like going into your first Schmoedown match ever?
Well, there was a lot of prep, actually. Initially, you know, Christian had told me that we're doing this trivia thing, and I think you'd be good at it, because we used to see each other. We still do at a lot of different various movie screenings around town for the press. And he told me this would be fun, and you think you could do it sometime. And I'm like, cool. And he invited me to come to a taping. And the first taping that I went to was the first match where Rocha did the whole, I'm going to do the whole match blindfolded thing. Which was just wonderful showmanship. And you're just like, oh, that's so badass. And I'm like, wait a minute, he's answering movie trivia. You can totally do that with a blindfold. Like, it's totally like, it's so good. It's so cool, but it's so cool in the moment. Like, I'm not making fun of him for it. Like, it's just sort of the thing where it's like, it's great showmanship. And I was like, that was one of the reasons why I was like, I want to do that. I get to do fun showmanship stuff. Let's do that. So we set up my match, and it was going to be against Mark Andreyko. And funnily enough, like, I was a fan of Mark Andreyko. Like, I knew his comics. Like, I was like genuinely like, ooh, I get to play a celebrity, because he'd written like Manhunter, which is one of my favorite superhero comics around that time. So that was kind of cool. But like, I had to, and I really agonized over it. I had to come up with a character and an entrance. I really wanted to do a fun entrance. And the thing that I agonized, I think, more than anything else, because at the time, I actually had, because I did that whole jumpsuit, chains, Hannibal Lecter mask. Like, the only thing I didn't have in that costume already were the chains. I just bought those from a local costume shop. That's just costume stuff I had in the back from Halloween. I agonized over trying to figure out my name. Like, I really, really struggled with what should I be called? And I wish I remembered everything, because I dozens upon dozens of possibilities, and I would just say them. It's like when you're like a kid and like you have a crush on a celebrity, and like you're writing in your binder. It's just like, I don't know, like it's like I'm trying to think of like who you'd have, like who I would have had like a crush on in like high school, like Julianne Moore, and I would like write like William Moore. Yeah, I'd take her last name. It would look cool. Like, so I'm just trying to like write it down, think about it. How does it sound? I went through a couple of different possibilities. One was I didn't realize it was taken. I actually said, "What if I was William the Wildman Bibiani?" And Christian's like, "That's Josh." And I'm like, "Oh,
I watched
Sorry.
the show. I know.
I should have watched more episodes. I guess I missed that one. Sorry." So that was
Or
on
you
me.
watched one and it got stuck in the back of your head and you didn't know it was sitting
That
there.
might have been a thing. This is why you're running by everybody. So there was that. The stupidest one I had, and I really was gung ho about it, and Christian was just like, "You're not doing that." Was I wanted to be called William Sliced Bread Bibiani. And it was going to be a gift to my competitors. Like, yeah, I'm going to be the best thing since sliced bread.
Oh my gosh.
And then I was going to go out there and I was going to have like a sword, like, "You're about to get sliced." But
I love it
as
for the pun.
the pun was there, the actual
so
persona
good.
was abstract at best. It didn't work at all.
How far do you go with that? How many
Yeah.
bread entrances can you make?
I'm sure I could have had. Look at me.
Yeah.
This
I mean,
you think I would like run out of bread entrances?
true. Very true.
God. Would have been great. But yeah, Christian vetoed that. And I can't honestly remember who. I think it might have been Christian who came up with the Beast. Because we were talking about something. I was in like the Wildman area. I thought about like William the Tiger Bibiani or something like that. And he like, it's a little alliteration. You should just go with that. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's fine. And so it worked.
How hard did you fight for sliced bread? How hard did you push for that?
Enough that Christian got a little impatient, but not a lot. Like I was just like, "Sliced bread," and he was like, "No, let me explain how this will work." And then I explained, and he was like, "No," and I was like, "You don't understand. Other competitors can say I'm the best things in sliced bread," and he was like, "No," and I'm like, "Well, is the Wildman taken? Yes, damn it!" Like it was a conversation. It wasn't a lot. It was one conversation in which I nudged him a couple of times, and I was like, maybe he can see it my way. And I'm like, no. So it didn't work out. But the Beast was actually a really, really great name for me, and I think it fit.
Your toast just writes itself as a smack.
Right? Beautiful. It would have been the best thing, but like it just didn't.
Since sliced bread.
True.
Yeah. No. Well. Okay. So that's. See now I think of all the wasted opportunities that we could have had with that.
I know, but that's true for everybody. Almost everybody had like other ideas they had for their character or for their name, and I would say, a few people changed over the course of the show. Like Lon is the most obvious example, but other people.
Oh yeah.
Brandon's another one. They would rebrand themselves. Yeah, mostly it worked out. Usually he was like really spot on in terms of giving people a good persona.
I love this. Any career highlights that you love going over and over with yourself, or just at all?
A few.
There must be so many.
Well, the big one for me is the Free for All 3, because even though I didn't win, that was an event, and that was a cool thing to realize it was happening as it was happening. And I even remember driving to the event that morning, and I was kind of mad. I was like, really? You're going to put me in at number 1? Knowing full well that the odds are astronomically against anyone making it to the end and actually winning this thing at number 1.
Yeah.
I was just a little angry in my car. Like, and I get it. It made sense. It was fine. But like, I was like, and I finally, I realized, like, no, you know what? I'm going to go up there with the full intention of breaking this thing and showing that can happen. And you know what? I actually did. And I felt really good about myself that day. And I think I did something really cool. And it would have been cooler if I'd won, but it was a little bit of a twist, wasn't it? Right at the end. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Because Dan Murrell doesn't have enough accolades.
Once White Whale.
That's fine. It's fine. But I love Dan to pieces. No, I did. I'm really, really proud of what I did that day. And I think I did something that was pretty unique in the Schmodown. So that's the big one. And I'm also really, 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 really proud of everything we achieved with Shazam, with me, Brendan, and Coy, and everyone else who helped us in the Quirky Mercs. Everyone from, Angie Malanta to Jesse to just everyone who helped. They were all wonderful. And I think winning at Spectacular when we had lost twice at Spectacular was a big deal for me. Like, it was just, I still remember, like, I knew we had it in the bag. Like, I know we know the answer to this, so we're going to win. And there was this little moment where I was like, this peaceful moment where like, it worked out. And then I gave the answer and they announced it. And I remember Brendan grabbing me by the lapels and going, yeah, like right in my face. And I'm like, COVID's still a thing, Brendan. But it was fine. But it was, I still remember like him just screaming. He was so happy. It was so great. So that's a big moment for me. And that made me really, really happy. That's definitely one of the highlights.
Must have been pretty surreal though to get to there finally.
Yeah, to do it in that, especially in that kind of a venue with that big crowd. Like that,
I mean,
was
almost
awesome.
that was the perfect moment for that to happen. Really,
Yeah.
like that was probably the best way that could have worked. I
was just very, very happy with how it worked out, and so yeah, that was huge. That was a big deal.
Anything behind the scenes that you wish people like the audience or fans got to know about, or anything that you?
That's an interesting question. I mean, there's so much. I could tell you anecdotes about practically any match if I thought about it hard enough. But I wish the people fully appreciated, and some do, thank goodness. But I wish people fully appreciated just how seriously so many of us took this, that it was absolutely a real sport. Every single match, and we found itself, we ended up having to update rules just like any other sport. Like the 3-pointer was a relatively recent invention in basketball, all things considered. Like sports evolve over time as we realize that we need updates, but it was always something that we all really cared about and we all took really, really seriously. And there were heated moments behind the scenes where there was a challenge that we were super mad about, and like people threatening to leave and everything like that. And it was that happened more times than I care to admit, but not as many as you might think. Just a handful.
Yeah.
But like it was always just like this big, like, because we cared so much. It really mattered to us. And it's as we were filming the last episode, that we filmed that already. I'm not going to tell anyone what happened, but
not
nice try. I'm not going to do it. But we filmed it, and it was as we were like saying our goodbyes, leaving the studio for the last time. Quite a few of us hung out in a bar for a little while afterwards. But when I was driving home, I realized that there's a lot of people who I love to pieces. I consider them very dear friends. And I'm going to be friends with them online, probably for the rest of my life. But I may literally never see them in person again.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them don't live near here. And even if they do, life is complicated. There's a lot of people who I consider absolutely part of my life. They have been important parts of my life, directly or indirectly, for over half a decade in my case. And they're important to me, every single one of them. And so we did this, for the entertainment. We did it for the fans, but we also did it together.
Yeah.
And doing it together, doing this thing that we really, really care about, and like proving ourselves to each other and trying to entertain each other and trying to make this one thing that we're all totally different people, and we're all trying to make this one thing the best thing it could be. That was really, really beautiful. Even when it got heated, even when things didn't work out the way we wanted it to, that was something that was truly kind of magical most of the time. And I wish people could have some of that. I wish people could see just how cool it usually was. So yeah, that's something I wish more people knew and properly understood, because I can tell you about it, but it's just not the same. It's like telling someone what it's like to be in love if they've never been in love. It's like, it's life-changing. It's even if it doesn't work out, even if the show gets canceled, even if you break up with the person, it doesn't matter. Like, this was a life-changing thing that is better for all of us, and we all put our all into it. That was great. That made me really happy. So yeah.
I mean, look at what it did. It brought a whole bunch. Look, I'm from New Zealand. I never would have met most of the people actually all the people that I now know as a result of this internet show. So it's a really crazy shared experience that competitors have.
I love how much it meant to everyone who watched it too. Like, I know some people were casual. I know some people dropped off over the years. That's true for any show. Listen, we had 9 seasons. That's incredible by any measure. but the fans who stuck with it and were like always invested in it, and went to the live shows if they could, or watch the shows, or send in the questions, or participated on Patreon, whatever. Even if we just watched it a lot and just it meant something to you when you watch it every week, we were all part of something, and that's really, really cool. And you don't get something like that very often.
No,
you really don't. It's not common. Like, you're lucky if it happens once. So to be a part of that is just super, super beautiful. Honestly, I become ineloquent when that happens, and I just sort of talk about it. But like, it was really, really great. And it seriously, at its best, it was one of the nicest things in my life. I managed to get through the entire last day of filming without crying, and you almost got me there. That's not a badge of honor, by the way. There's nothing wrong with crying. A lot of people cried that last day. Do not feel the need to hide your feelings. I just, for whatever reason, the waterworks never quite came, and now you've almost got me there. So we'll just see what happens. We'll see if it goes. But like, we'll just see. I'm not going to force it. But if this keeps going on, who knows?
Absolutely. Ben wants to know, do you have a favorite season?
Ooh. I think it would be even though it didn't end in victory, I think it would have been Shazam's first season, because it started with the free-for-all, or like, actually, I think it started with critically acclaimed versus the Shire Wolves, which was a fun match. And I think if we'd had a manager, we might have been able to take that, because we had a couple of challenges we didn't do, and we were just too in the middle of the match to really recognize it. But
yeah,
neither here nor there. Then we had the free-for-all, which was amazing. And then we had those wonderful scenes of me and Brendan working together. Those were a lot of fun to create. And then we had a really incredible tournament season where Shazam made it all the way to the end. And I made it all the way to the finals up against Ben Bateman. And because of Ben had a thing, but like we ended up having to do the tournament final at Spectacular, followed by a singles thing. So I theoretically could have played 3 matches that night. Would have been wild. But that was great. We were just on a roll. We were filming. There was one day that season where we filmed, or at least, we were filming tons of matches every day we filmed. There's one day where I think I played 4 matches and won all 4 of them. It was like a teams match and a singles match and 2 exhibition matches in like one day. And one of them, they were just like, "Hey, we need someone else. We just need a filler." And I'm like, "Okay." So like, yeah, that was a good day. That made me really, really happy. But like, yeah, I think that was probably my favorite, just because it felt like everything was coming together. We had found our groove. I'd found my character. We were playing at the top of our abilities. There was a lot of fun stuff going on, a lot of creative stuff. I'm really proud of the entrances we did that season. It just all worked out. So I think in the end, while we may have had other more successful seasons, I think that's probably my favorite.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't have to be your best for it to be a favorite.
Not necessarily. I mean, it's nice. I definitely wouldn't pick a season in which I lost all the time. But like, it's still like, maybe someone would. I don't know. They have their reasons. But yeah, that was I feel like that was the show, like right in the middle. That was like the sweet spot when it just felt like everything was working the way it was supposed to work. Like we had a wonderful studio crew. We were able to do really creative things. The storylines were really, really excellent. The questions were getting harder, and the wins felt even more deserved than ever. We had a fantastic ensemble of players in every single division, and yeah, it just felt like the momentum was there, and that surely there would never be a pandemic. And it would just be great. And then it turns out eventually there was a pandemic, but it is what it is.
Who would have seen that coming?
I know, right? The pandemic happened like shortly, like it was like right in the start of a season. We filmed a handful of episodes. We had to, at the very last minute, cancel Free for All because it was going to be a big live show, and it would have been a bad idea in that.
Yeah,
it was the right thing to do, but boy, was it a bummer.
Yeah.
But it will never fail to make me laugh that like the big entrance at the previous Spectacular, the one that like got John Roca an award, was him showing up even though he was sick. It was like, oh no, he's sick. Will he show up? Yay, he showed up, even though he's sick. And then 3 months later, it's like, oh, we should never do that entrance again.
Yeah.
We had no way of knowing. Like, it was, he just had the sniffles. He was fine. But like it was just the sort of thing where it's just like, ooh. That could have been bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Funny.
I mean, are you going to miss studying at all? Because I know I've talked to a few competitors, and they've talked to me about like how some of them have physical cards that they go through. Some of them had digital, and I was talking to one competitor that said to me, "It's going to be really nice to watch a movie that isn't in my division."
Yeah,
and
a lot
so
of.
Do you feel like you're going to be able to appreciate movies more, or do you feel like doing this made you appreciate movies on a completely different level?
Well, I watch movies constantly for work anyhow, and that's new and old. So it doesn't really affect my viewing habits too much, except for like if we were going to study a specific category. So one of you know, I am okay with talking about this now. I don't know if we're going to come back, but one of like the strategies Shazam had that enabled us to study an entire category like in twice the time was, I think a lot of people, when they would study like a category with a teammate, they were like, okay, we're all going to watch all these movies. We're all going to study all these movies. We would divvy it up. So he would watch half and I would watch half.
Smart.
And then we knew just to trust each other. Like, I didn't see that one, but you know that? Okay, great. So we were able to get a lot done and a lot faster. And we were able to master a lot of categories really quickly. So we had these lists of things that we were going to watch. And so I would focus on those. So I'm not necessarily doing that. Like, oh God, I got to watch Charlize Theron's first 5 movies this weekend. Not that that's a huge chore, but that wasn't something I was going to do. And now I do have some free time now. But I didn't have, I wasn't in Inner Geekdom. I wasn't in Star Wars. And so I didn't have this responsibility to keep rewatching the same movies over and over again. And this is the thing that kept me out of those divisions. I actually, one regret I do have is that I never played one Inner Geekdom match. There was an opportunity I had to play an Inner Geekdom match once. It was just, we need a filler. Is anyone interested? And they actually came to. I don't remember, but like it was a while ago. But it was basically just like, hey, would you be interested? And I was like, I got so much else on my plate. I don't think I'd be any good at it right now. But I regret not doing it because I wish I could have played once just to see how I would have done. Yeah. Because I respect the hell out of the Inner Geekdom players. They had to watch the same movies over and over again, and some of them are terrible.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Son of the Mask? It's unbearable. It is one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and I watch bad movies for a living. So if I'm saying that, that's supposed to mean something, and it does. So like, I have a ton of respect for the Inner Geekdom players and the Star Wars players who understand Star Wars on a level. One of the greatest joys I had was helping Andrew DiMolanta train and trying to come up with questions that would stump him. And every once in a while, a couple of times. Oh, not often, not usually. He was like, I would come up with a question that I thought was the hardest question in the world. This is like the 5-pointer I've got for you. And he's like, that's like a 1. And I'm like, come on.
Damn it.
Are you kidding me?
Come on.
But like every once, there would happen like 2 or 3 times. I would ask a question and he would be like, whoa, I never thought of that. So every once in a while I did it. Would you wear that as a
little badge of honor? Would you be like, yes, I got one?
The badge of honor was when I think one of them, I can't remember which one. One of them did come up once. Like there was at least one question I came up with and I was like, boy, am I glad I asked that. And then there was another time where a question came up that he missed. And I was like, oh, I'm so angry at myself for missing that. We should have, that's an aspect of Star Wars we should have studied more. And I felt really bad. And I was just like, what are you going to do? You can't control all of it. But no, seriously, he brought all of that. I like, there were like 2 questions that I was able to be like, you didn't know that, did you? And then like 80 billion questions about Star Wars that he just knows. And it was incredible. And I don't understand how he knows it. I really, really don't. So I have tons of respect for that. The thing that I'm struggling with now that the game is over is the way I studied. I didn't use note cards. What I would do is my brain thinks about movies all the time. A, because I'm a film critic, and B, just because I'm a movie fan. That's why I became a film critic. All film critics are movie fans. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Anytime I thought about a movie, I would ask myself a handful of simple trivia questions about it. Like, okay, how many Oscars was that nominated for? Who directed that? Did anyone get their start in that movie? How many people got killed in that Halloween movie? That kind of thing. And so I was constantly quizzing myself about any random movie that happened to come. And if there was a question I didn't know the answer to, I would just pick up my phone and I would look it up. So I was studying literally every single day for what probably amounted to 30 minutes to an hour every single day, even when I didn't have a match going on. And now I'm walking around and I'm thinking to myself, did Choi Hark direct Warriors of Virtue? It was Choi Hark, right? I should look that up. That might be important. That will never be important. I can look that up. If I need to know that information, I'm allowed to just look that up on IMDb now. I don't need to know that off the top. And the thing that I'm exceptionally glad I never have to think about again is movie release dates.
Oh, I don't know how you guys did that.
We didn't. A lot of us. That's how. That's the answer. Some of us are really good at it. Some of us just think that way. For me, when I think, oh, hi, Luca. It's like when you got a cat over here.
Oh, yes. Cat appearance.
He's a good boy. He's a good boy.
Oh.
He helped me study a lot. Hi, buddy. It's about your lunchtime? I'll get you lunchtime a little bit. It's about his lunchtime. But where was I going with this? I had a thing. I was saying a thing.
Movie release dates.
Oh, movie release dates. So, like, I don't think in movie release dates. Movie release dates, I consider, it's trivia, sure, but it's like box office trivia. It's outside the movie. While the general era in which a movie comes out is often very significant, and occasionally the year in which it comes out is legitimately important, it just happened to come out that year. It could have come out the year afterwards. The studio could have just held it for another release date. I consider that information to be a little arbitrary. So I don't usually think that way, which is why it's even though I didn't get a lot of movie release dates questions right over the course of the Movie Trivia Schmoedown, I usually was close. I was usually only like a year or two off.
Yeah.
Because I know when it came out, but I'm bad at numbers, and that's not just math. Like, I'm just bad at numbers.
Yeah.
So, like, when did Armageddon come out? Was it 97? Was it 98? It was one of those. And I was always off by one. I was incessantly off by one. It drove me up the wall. I was like, come on, every time. So every time I got one right, it made me really, really happy. But yeah, that's a level of minutia that I'm just not interested in as a film lover. That's just not my bag. It's like knowing box office information. I don't think it's super important most of the time. And if it is, you can always look it up.
Yeah.
Whereas being able to talk about the actual content of the movies, who is in it? What is the plot about? What does it mean? What is its significance? What did it influence? What influenced it? That's something I want to be able to pull off the top of my head, because that actually, we can have a real meaningful conversation about that. And we can actually talk about how these movies really matter to us and to the industry and to the art form. And I can help educate people about that. And if I'm off the release year by one, nothing has changed.
No.
Except, I'm sorry, I thought that came out in 98. Turns out it was 97. The majority of the stuff I said was meaningful. And if I'm writing it, I'm going to check it on IMDb anyway. You always do, just in case. So yeah. Anyway, so I'm glad I don't have to think about movie release dates anymore. But all the other trivia, I'm still trivia minded, and it's going to take a real long time for me to realize I don't have to know that stuff anymore. I still like it. That's the reason why I was getting in the first place, because I was collecting trivia to begin with. But I don't have to think about it on the sort of incessant level that I did. So that's going to be an adjustment. I'm actually I'm in this weird phase where I did something that seemed like a cool idea, and then I realized too late that there was a downside I hadn't planned for, which is I turned my hobby into my career.
Yeah.
That always seems like a good idea, right? You do what you love. You never work a day in your life. Well, that's not strictly true. It's always worked sometime. There's always a day where it's like, this is the part I don't like. Yeah. But beyond that, if you turn your hobby into a career, the downside is you don't have a hobby. And then, so when I'm not watching movies for work, what am I doing for fun? I'm watching movies. And if I'm watching a movie, even for fun, occasionally I'm thinking to myself, I should write an article about this. This is really interesting in some way. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I don't have this thing on the side that is just for me. To relax to not think about anything else that's important in my life, not focus on my job or my bills or my mental health issues or anything like that. I could just zone out. Like, my dad built motorcycles. That's what he did. He would repair and build motorcycles from spare parts. He would just do that in the backyard. And I never picked up on that. I was never mechanically minded. I was never any good at it. For years now, for about 6 years now, the Schmodown was my hobby. It's what I did for fun. And it was related to what I did for work, but ultimately it's what I got to hang out with friends. I got to talk about movies in a way that was, it's kind of professional, but it's for fun. You don't have to do it. And I got to be creative on the side. And now I don't have that. And now I need to figure out, what am I going to do with all this extra mental energy and free time?
Mm-hmm.
And I got a few ideas. I got a few projects I'm thinking about working on for me. But it's still, we filmed the last episode only like 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
So I'm still figuring it out. But that's something that's gone. Yeah, what's gone is I basically lost my hobby. So it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I imagine. You've got a couple of, like, Peggy said that it's the same for her, and PJ misses watching movies just to watch
PJ, God.
Yeah,
I love PJ to death. PJ is one of my favorite human beings. PJ has been absolutely wonderful throughout this entire process. And as great as the show always was, I think when PJ took over as the question writer, that level of it evolved a bit, and it started to become a little bit more intensive, and I think a little bit more consistent in terms of like question difficulty. Mm-hmm. And I think he just approached it in a very particular, very professional way, where he really had a plan that was maybe not there from the beginning. And so kudos to PJ. PJ, you have my love and respect always, but the effort you must have gone to constantly, because I would do fake matches. Mm-hmm. I would come up with matches, and in order to come up with matches to help, Andrew DiMolanta train, to help Brendan train, to help Liz Shannon Miller, well, anyone who was in the Quirky Mix, you try to think like the question writers. You try to think to yourself, here's a bit of trivia. Okay, but how would they present that? How would they present that as a one-pointer when it's a direct piece of information? How would they present that as a two-pointer when they remove a little bit of context just to make it a little bit harder? How would they find this question? Is this too difficult even for a 5? Is this unreasonable to ask? And the thing with the PJ era in particular was he and his writing staff, and they all deserve a ton of credit. Thank you, PJ. I love you too. But like, they all deserve a ton of credit. They had formats and styles that could be studied to the extent, and I think I pissed PJ off. PJ, if you're still watching, I'm very, very curious. At the final Shazam and Corruption match, during a speed round, when I heard the first few words of a question and I accurately guessed where the question was going, because I had written in preparation for that match as a studying mechanism over 100 potential speed round questions, just because I knew how the formats were working. So I knew ahead of time, here's where it's probably going. Could have been wrong, but I was right. And I guessed it before they even got to the question part of the question.
Oh my gosh.
I'm curious if PJ was mad at me.
I'm
curious, PJ, if you want to leave a comment in here, like, I'm curious what your reaction was when I did that. Because I know we talked about it at the time, but I don't know like how focused I was. Maybe you told me and I was just still in a daze from post-match fog. But let me know. I'd be very curious, because that was that was a good moment, actually. I remember being very proud of that.
Well, because, there we go. No, he was amazed by it.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm glad it worked out. I was a little worried.
Because PJ will openly admit this, I'm sure, because he's said it to me on several occasions. He said, if you know us, the writing staff, it becomes a lot easier for you to understand where the questions are going.
Yeah.
Like, if you watch PJ closely enough, you know what he enjoys, where he wants to go. You've got the Ed Harris of it all. You've got, all those.
That's PLD mostly, but yeah.
I don't know. PJ sort of admitted.
Oh, it's a PJ too?
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that PJ loves the Halloween movies, so you study those. I know we all know PJ loves The Rocketeer, and that era of pulp. So you watch
on the planet that loves it more than
there was an era of the Schmodown. I don't remember if PJ was a question writer yet. It might have been just before or just after he joined. But there was an era of the Schmodown where I swear to God, towards the end of a season, Bruce Campbell, that's true. There was towards the end of the season, we had in quick succession. I remember because we recorded them all together, even though they aired apart, so it might not have been as noticeable at home. There were like 5 Kingsman 2 sequel questions. There were like 5 questions about the Kingsman 2. And I'm going to say something right now. I never watched that movie. I had no desire. That's one of the very few movies where I hated the original so much. There's things that are good about it, but just the overall tone and attitude of it was just so nails on chalkboard to me that I just refused. I didn't have to watch the sequels, so I didn't watch the sequels.
Oh no.
And I was worried one day that would be the thing that got me. And it never came up. It never came up. So thank God. Thank God that wasn't like the last, like the last sudden death question in that 51-50 corruption match, because then it would have been over. Because obviously they would have known it because they're engagement players. There's a couple of movies that I just never watched, even though the questions kept coming up, kind of on principle, just kind of daring fate to screw me over. And I'll reveal one other film, a film that a lot of people love, and I have no moral objection to whatsoever. It's just never came up, and it kept coming up in the Schmoedown so much, I kind of quietly resented it and just never wanted. You're not going to make me watch Dodgeball.
Oh,
I might have watched Dodgeball if you didn't ask 50 questions about it this season. But now I feel like I'm being forced to watch. I feel like I'm being forced to watch Dodgeball. So I'm not gonna watch. I will look at the Wikipedia page briefly, but I am not gonna watch Dodgeball. And now that the show is over, maybe I finally will watch Dodgeball. There's a couple of movies I watched for the Schmoedown that are just like, you know what, this is probably gonna come up on the Schmoedown. I'm not super interested, but like questions about it keep coming up. And occasionally
there's discourse now in the chat over the Dodgeball thing.
I know, but here's what I'm going to say. Occasionally I would see the movie and I would go like, you guys are right, this movie is wonderful. Like Walk Hard. I had missed that movie when it came out. It kept coming up with the Schmoedown, and I was like, I'll watch it. And you know what? That movie is delightful. That movie is very, very funny. I loved it to pieces. And but then another one that I watched and I hated it to pieces, and I know a lot of people love this movie, but to me, it's a horror movie with a laugh track. It's Step Brothers.
Oh.
I can't stand that movie. That movie is an exercise in cruelty. Those two people are destroying their parents' lives, and I don't think it's funny. I think it's just sad. I find it incredibly sad for their parents. So I can't enjoy that film. I know a lot of people do. I get why you do. My focus is always elsewhere.
Yeah.
And so I can never get behind it. So after that, I was like, I'm not necessarily yeah. Well,
I'm the same with The Notebook. I can't stand it.
Oh, I can't stand The Notebook.
I can't.
I'm with The Notebook. It's so insufferable to me.
There's this wonderful fiance. He never treats her bad, and she's like, "But I'm going to go run back to my volatile ex-boyfriend." It's so romantic.
I got 20 minutes into The Notebook. I got 20 minutes into, and they're laying down in the middle of the goddamn street, and I'm like, he's going to get you killed. I don't want to watch this anymore. It's just not healthy. And listen. That's a matter of perspective.
Film yelling at each other. I'm like, this is not a healthy relationship, guys.
Movies taught us that bickering was the key to happiness, and I'm going to tell you this right now. No, it's actually not. Disagreements are natural in any relationship, but just hating each other, like so many people do in movies, is not a key to successful romance. It's bad, actually.
Volatile.
So, listen, some of that's a matter of perspective. I grew up, my parents were both educators. So if I'm watching a movie, here's an example of another movie, School of Rock. Mm-hmm. There's nothing technically wrong with School of Rock. I can appreciate School of Rock as a well-made movie. But as someone who grew up around educators, I can see in that movie is this guy who is not qualified to be a teacher come in and completely derail these kids' actual education. Yeah. You are completely falling behind in every aspect of your curriculum. And they specifically try to get around that because they say all of these kids are super geniuses. And I'm like, yeah, because if they weren't, this would be completely unforgivable. But you know what? It's still not cool what he's doing. He's sabotaging their education. He should be teaching an elective class.
Them at the end as well. It's great.
Yeah,
kidnaps him in a school bus.
He should be teaching band. If he was teaching band, fine. Then it's like, oh, I'm not teaching them classic rock. I'm teaching them rock. I can support that. That's fun. You're just ruining their education. They're not going to learn English. They're not learning math. They're not learning history. They're not learning another language. They're just a waste of their time at that point. To spend all this time on your, I'm getting off on a rant. But that's me looking at it from a perspective of an educator. As a kid, if I was just like, I wish my teacher would teach me rock and roll for all day and I didn't have to learn all these other subjects, I would probably get it. But I'm not looking at it from that angle. That's my angle. So, anyway.
I mean,
That was a whole rant.
Totally
wasn't it?
not. No, I love these sorts of things. It's really that's a nice thing I imagine about not having to go watch films now that you're like, because I imagine there were films that you had to watch for the Schmodown, but not necessarily for your career, right? Or were they all sort of crossing
Well,
over with you?
there's no downside to being well versed in film, especially if
Mhm.
you're in the industry in any capacity, but especially if you're a critic. So there would be examples where, like, okay, well, we're gonna, one of the categories that everyone knows that the kid and I would put on the wheel relatively often was Alfred Hitchcock, because we both like Hitchcock movies and we're
Oh
both very
god,
well
do I
versed
love
in them.
his films.
And there's a ton of movies, like a spectacular number of movies. He was prolific over the course of over 50 years. That for a lot of people, you might know the big ones, but the smaller ones could trip you up. And we thought that was a good strategy. So I would watch Hitchcock movies that I didn't necessarily have to watch for my career, but it didn't hurt my career. And in fact, I was actually able to understand Hitchcock better as a filmmaker and encounter some movies that I dramatically underrated in his career. Like, a lot of people think Under Capricorn is a bad movie. They're wrong. That movie is fantastic. And I was able to do that because I was able to make the time, because of the Schmodown, to focus on some of the smaller films in that filmography. So it all worked out.
Any other gems in Hitchcock that you think?
The original, The Man Who Knew Too Much. A lot of people focus on the remake.
I did a double feature this year where I watched the original and then I watched the remake.
Yeah, they're very different films. The first one's it's much more like a horror movie in a lot of ways. And I love it to pieces. It's super great. I never watched Jamaica Inn before, and I was actually I didn't actually know what it was about. I didn't realize it was about pirates. And like, he did a pirate movie, and it's really cool, and it's got good twists and stuff. Like, that's a fun one. Had a blast with that. And I also found out that sometimes he made movies that suck. I watched the Paradine Case. It's terrible. I've never seen Gregory Peck so miscast. Like, it's totally wrong. So like, every once in a while you find one of the stinkers, but mostly it was just really, really cool to like have an excuse to go through that filmography. So
yeah, I'm sure there are missteps in everyone's career.
Sure, especially the longer
you
go. The longer you go, you're going to screw something up. And they're missteps in my Schmodown career, that's for sure. So what are you going to
do? Exactly. Is there any category that you're kind of like, oh, thank goodness I don't have to keep going back to this?
Movie release dates. I never. We would study it constantly, and I would do pretty good in training. But you never know exactly what question is going to come up. Like, it's either going to be like one. It's almost always one question in round one. Thanks, PJ. Like, there's a reason. I think it's a big part of the reason why, even though I used to have pretty consistently like perfect round ones for multiple seasons, PJ was just like, let's do one every single round one just to mess with Bibbs. Just to ruin Bibbs's record, just to mess with his stats. Let's do it. I'm mad at him for some reason. I'm like, okay. So that one I'm very, very happy I don't have to think about anymore. I love you too, PJ.
PJ was also really stoked that you put Hitchcock on the wheel, because movies did exist before the 1980s.
And this is something that was very frustrating to me. And I know that like some of the people who played the Schmodown were more casual film fans who did it for fun, and I appreciate that, and that's totally fine. But it always frustrates me when people, regardless of whether they're playing the Schmodown or just regular, saying like, "Oh, that came out before I was born," and I'm like, "So did most things."
Yeah,
like most books came out before.
Do you like
most
culture?
Books came out before you were born. Most words were invented before you were born. Most music came out before you were born. Like, if you're completely shut off to that because you think it's irrelevant to you because you're born, and this is I'm not projecting a little bit. I'm not saying anyone had that strong like, I'm not watching it because it came out before 1982. Like, no, but there was this general sort of passive thing where it's like, it's from the 70s. I don't feel too bad about not knowing it. I'm like, I would feel bad. I think it's important to know these things. And that's me putting a lot of pressure on myself. And I don't mean to put that pressure on other people. But one of the things I loved about the Schmodown was that we could use it to educate people, or at least make people aware of other movies. And it's one of the reasons why when I played, I usually didn't like to just give the answer unless it was pretty perfunctory. I like to editorialize a little bit. I want people to know, this is a good movie. You should see this one. Because I think this is something really invaluable that the show had the capacity to do. Every show, and just the questions alone, let alone like the bits and the sketches and the entrances and the commentary, dozens of movies, completely random, disparate movies that would normally never be discussed in the same episode of anything together would come up. You could learn a lot just from watching whatever is brought up on the Schmodown.
Oh my gosh,
So
yeah.
I loved that part of it. I wish we could have emphasized that even more. I wish we could have had more matches that were about older stuff. Like we had talked for a long time about, like, there were a lot of exhibition matches, and a lot of them were focused on, stuff that's really, really popular. We'll do a Lord of the Rings match, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
There was always this hope that we would get a little bit more niche, and like we had talked for a long time about doing like a classics exhibition match, and film it in
Ooh.
black and white,
Oh,
and it would have been really, really fun. And I knew we had some people who were super interested in it, but it always seemed like not the most effective use of our time right now, because you got to think of your audience. Not everyone's going to be super interested in it. They'll probably get a bigger audience for if we do a Marvel match. And I'm like, I get it. But, it would have been cool. I would have liked it a lot.
yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, is it's what's interesting to me is I think what would be really cool is doing like a roundtable discussion with some Schmoedown competitors, because you guys are lovers of movies and you don't get to actually talk about the movies enough. You get to compete in the trivia, but some of the best conversations I've had this year are people in the Schmoedown that are like, oh, did you know about this film? And like they'll talk about it and they're so passionate about it. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see where people take that passion now that they don't have this as an outlet.
Like a lot of us do. Like I have a podcast network, the Critically Acclaimed Network, also on Patreon, patreon.com/critically acclaimed network, where we have a lot of exclusive shows. We just started a show called Step Me Up, Step Me Down, where we are looking at every single film in the Step Up franchise and then eventually the TV series.
No.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
We're just about, like, literally, like, I was editing it before we started this, and I'm going to put it up later today. The second episode about Step Up to the Streets, which is like an hour and a half of like deep analysis of Step Up to the Streets. It's one of the most fun I've ever had recording a podcast in a while. We got that going on over there. We have deep dives into the Oscars. Like, I have an outlet. But not everyone does. And I was actually talking to some people about, like, who don't necessarily, like, have a YouTube show or don't necessarily have a podcast, and this was, like, their big thing. I was like, so what are you going to do? And I know some people are, like, really focusing their creative energies on, like, personal projects, and, like, that's super duper awesome. I can't wait to see what they come up with. It was a ton of really creative, really learned people who worked on the Schmoedown in front of him behind the camera, and I just can't wait to see what they all do next, because I know some of the people here in particular are going to really take off on one level or another if they haven't already. Yeah. It's just been such a great crew.
I mean, PJ is sad that he never got his Halloween exhibition match.
I wanted that match. Oh my god, you would have had to keep me away with a stick. In fact, I think there were 2 horror free-for-alls. There was at least one that I never got to compete in, and I'm still mad about that. I would have killed it, and I think maybe that's one of the reasons why they weren't so gung-ho about, we got to make sure we get bibs. like they're like, no, let's like, come on. I fought tooth and nail. I really did. It was not my choice to make, and I understand that the reasons why it didn't happen. But anyone who works in the Schmoedown will tell you, the real white whale I had was to create a horror division.
Oh, and PJ would have loved that.
PJ would have loved that. I know a lot of people would have loved that. And I think it might, like, if we did it right, hopefully it might have attracted some people to the Schmoedown who weren't already watching. Then again, maybe it was niche for the main demographic and not enough people would have watched it, and it might not have worked. That was the kind of argument. I get it.
I mean, but look at the Star Wars division last year and how like extreme. Let's be honest, the average viewer didn't know those questions, but they still watch.
But, and I'm going to play devil's advocate against myself here. I will grant you, the average viewer has seen Star Wars.
True.
We're talking about some of the most popular movies in history. People, even if you would watch it and you go, like, I can answer a few of those, but then you're just impressed that someone else knows these things better than you are. I understand why the Star Wars division was successful. It should have been successful. It was a great thing to do. And PJ did a great job. Everyone players did. It was great. Horror, although it's very rare for horror movies to make as much money as any Star Wars film, horror is a facet of the entertainment industry that has kept it afloat during times of famine. As far as the entertainment industry was going, Universal literally only survived the Great Depression because of their monster movies. There are movie studios that survived the 1980s just because nothing else was making money, but we can churn out a Friday the 13th movie in 6 months and make a profit. Like, these movies keep the industry afloat. and they have a huge audience. They have, they've got their own geekdom. Hell, geekdom as we know it was functionally invented by horror fans of the Universal movies, fans of Godzilla. Yeah. They created the famous Monsters of Filmland magazine. It's between that and Star Trek were the two things that and Doctor Who to a different extent, but like those were the things that basically created fandom as we know it. Star Wars is way behind. Maybe it perfected it. I don't know. I think there's a lot of problems with that fandom, but like in terms of just like the obsession and the widespread popularity, maybe Star Wars has outpaced them all, but these are all part of it. So I would have loved that. I know PJ would have loved that. I know some people would love that. I know some people wouldn't have, and that's okay too. And that's why it didn't happen. There was just a general sense of it probably wouldn't work. I'm like, okay, I disagree, but it's not my call. I don't get to make those decisions. I would have loved it though. I think there was plenty of material for it. I think it could have been super awesome. And I loved doing the Halloween exhibition matches when we were still doing those. And it was one of my favorite things. So yeah, it would, and I would have, you would have, there's no way I would have not been in the Halloween. The only way it would have kept me out of the Halloween exhibition match is if you put me on the desk, and even then I would have been a little resentful about it.
Yeah, okay. So there's no way you wouldn't have competed.
I would have really wanted to compete. Yeah.
Who would you want to compete against?
I mean, anyone who wanted to. I know there's a lot of horror fans. I know Collins is a huge horror fan. I know he would have loved to have done it. Mark Edward Hoyk would have loved to have done it. Whitney Seibel is a huge horror fan. He probably would have done really, really good. I don't know if he would have had time to study, though. He's a very busy guy. Because that, the exhibition match would have gotten really nitty gritty.
Yeah.
As well it should have. Sure. Yeah, it should have. It's fine. But like, I don't. Yeah, maybe that wouldn't be the best pick. I'm trying to think who else was the biggest horror nerds. And Draco would have been really, really, really good. He would have been awesome. I think Barbarian was a big fan. I could be wrong about that, but I think he was. So yeah, we had fans. We had people who totally could have done great.
Yeah. Oh, I know there's enough people in it that would have really, really loved it.
Video Drew.
There we
go.
Video
Drew. Ben just pointed out Video Drew. I should have thought of it. Peggy might have mentioned her too. Video Drew. One of the greatest stars the league ever had. And I don't think they get enough credit for it. Video Drew came in with a character unlike any other. There's never been anyone like them. There will never be anyone like them again.
No.
Fully formed from frame one. You never knew what they were going to do. It was always entertaining. It was always original. And they could back it up. They're like, Tom was a hell of a co-player, but Video Drew came this close to beating Griffin Newman. People forget that. Video Drew's had perfect matches. Video Drew is an incredible competitor on every single level. I'm such a huge fan of Video Drew. I can't believe I didn't mention them earlier in the episode. I would have killed to have played with Video Drew. I would have killed to have played with Video Drew. Like, that would have been a dream bearing for me.
That would have been a great matchup as
Oh,
well.
God. We would have done the most fun, weird stuff. It would have been great.
My gosh, yes.
It would have just been so off-putting and so entertaining and so good-hearted about it. It would have been so good. I would have loved it.
So, I mean, look, we touched upon it earlier, and everyone does the same thing. Everyone talks about the people, but anything else that you're going to miss about the Schmoedown?
Friends. I really, it's the 90% of it. I miss, I'm going to miss the existence of a serious competitive organization sport that was designed for people who actually aren't necessarily that into sports.
Yeah.
Like I've played sport. I mean, I know I'm like, I ever since my knee went bad, I can't really do a lot of the physical activity I used to like sports. I used to play water polo in high school. I used to do the butterfly stroke in swimming competitions. I used to play tennis. Not like that was just for fun, but I never really competed with it, but I enjoyed it a lot. But ultimately I never really was into sporting competition. There was something very, I don't know, the whole environment never really worked for me, and I never really liked putting myself into that. But movie trivia as a serious competitive activity was very, very much up my alley. And something that I knew I could do. And I knew I could do it better than a lot of other people. And I don't know. I miss having that. I think that was a great thing to have, was a competitive sport that was all based around loving a work of art or loving an art form so much that you know so much about it, and you could come from anywhere, you could be from
Yeah.
any walk of life, you could be anybody, and just if you like movies enough, you can compete. And I'm gonna miss that. I think that's an aspect of it that we don't talk about enough. That it was actually like this great equalizer in a lot of ways, and allow people to appreciate and participate in something they might not otherwise have been allowed to or able to.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's amazing to me. I love that. I'm gonna miss that. I'm gonna miss that existing in the world. And I know there are other fan leagues, and I know that I'm not disrespecting them at all. It's just this was a big one, and it's gonna be a real bummer that it's not here.
You going to try and compete in like further movie trivia? Like if there's the odd match and things like that, would you?
Not right away. I don't know. I kind of want to let it sit for a little bit, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you see me around doing other stuff. Like I'd like to keep myself busy, in case anyone hadn't noticed.
You've got a lot
so
of things going on.
I do, but I do enjoy movie trivia a lot. I do enjoy that aspect of the entertainment medium. So yeah, I'm definitely not jumping right back into it right away. I actually kind of want to just let it sit and simmer and see what else I want to do. But
Yeah.
I'm probably going to do it again in the future in some capacity. I'm not sure what though.
I'm sure there'll be trivia matches that pop up here and there. I mean, PJ's already saying that he wants to write a horror match for October. Is that going to be on the PJ Campbell Network?
If however it is, PJ, I'll do it. I'm in. I'll do it. It's going to be great.
Well, he was saying hint, hint. So I think
I got it.
This is him giving you a proposition.
Yeah.
Peggy says, Bibbs was the catalyst for me finding y'all. I have the tweet receipts to prove it. Glad I was able to thank you in person at the final taping, buddy. And that's what I love.
Peggy is one of the most special people I've ever met in the history of the Schmodown, and that's a lot of people. And that's no disrespect to anyone like other than Peggy. It's just Peggy is very, very special. So thank you, Peggy. And it means a lot to me that you say that, and I'll never forget that. And it means the world to me. And thank you. Yeah. I'm not going to cry, damn it. I'm not trying to spare myself.
Parting words for Schmodown, because I want to obviously talk about your soap business, but I figured
my parting words were about the soap, actually.
There you go.
Saltcat Soap is something we created during the pandemic because it was something we could do, and we had a good idea. And it turns out that my partner, M. Lapis da Silva, who also has some books coming out soon, so follow them on Twitter. It was a cool idea, and it was something that is very practical, but it's also something that could be an art form. And so we created Saltcat Soap initially as an Etsy store, and we found some great success. A lot of people ordered our soaps; it was doing really well. But then Etsy changed the way they worked, and it didn't work for us anymore. And we thought it would drive our prices up so much it wouldn't be fair for anybody. So we have just recently, in the last couple of weeks, we have just relaunched Saltcat Soap, but now it is not an Etsy store. Now it is a Soap of the Month club that we are running through Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/saltcatsoap, you will find a Soap of the Month club with 2 tiers. You can get 1 soap a month that we create every month, or you get 2 where you get 1 with the new soaps, and we're also going to give you something from our extensive library sort of randomly as a treat. It is currently open to U.S. residents only right now, and again, that is just so that we don't have to, because shipping is ridiculous, and we don't want to gouge you. We want to make sure you're paying for the right amount. But the initial wave is about to go out. If you sign up now, you can get in for our October soaps, and we're going to have a poll, and you can help us decide which spooky-themed monster soap we're going to do for October. But for the first one we're going to do, this is actually one of our classic bars. This is the Ocean Floor Salt Bar. You can see its 3-dimensionality right there. So this is a bar, as you can see, it's the ocean, and it's also the sandy floor. The sandy floor is actually Himalayan salt, which is a wonderful exfoliant. Highly recommend it. It smells like sea salt and lily. It is very refreshing, very wonderful. These bars last a while, as you can imagine. They're pretty thick. This is one of the designs that M. Lapis da Silva came up with. This is one of our best sellers on Etsy. We thought we'd bring it back for our initial offering, but we're going to have wholly original soaps, seasonal soaps, soaps for all different kinds of uses, different kinds of fragrance profiles. And again, if you are a subscriber on Saltcat Soap, patreon.com/saltcatsoap, we're going to have polls. we're going to have polls, and you can help us decide which soaps we're going to make. So you're going to be part of that process as well. So thank you everybody who's signed up. It's still very, very early. The initial run is actually very, very manageable, but we hope it goes way out of hand and we have to make hundreds of soaps.
Yeah.
So feel free to
Hopefully
join
you're
up.
Insanely busy.
Yeah,
Insanely
so-
busy.
So yeah,
Oh,
we were shipping a ton in the
Soul
holiday
Chat
season
as well.
before. Not everything the horror films and they can recognize. Not who. Well, again, who's to say if it was a big misstep? Maybe it was the right way to go. Maybe it would have put a lot of.
From what
maybe,
the chat says, though, it sounds like there's quite a few people that were very keen on it. So
and again, I don't know. The counter argument is maybe we throw all our resources into this thing and it doesn't get a big audience, and there are definitely other things we could have done. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback these things. I get it. And I don't have access to all of their, if they've done demographic research, who can say? But I know I would have enjoyed it. I know other people would have enjoyed it. Would it have been enough to make a dent? Who can say? But it would have been fun. And I think we would have had a good time doing it. And that I can say. It would have been a real blast for everyone playing. So anyway. But yeah, Salt Cat Soap over at Patreon. Patreon.com/SaltCatSoap. And if you want to listen to a ton of podcasts hosted by myself and Whitney Seibold, you can subscribe wherever you find podcasts to the critically acclaimed network. And also we have a Patreon for that as well. Patreon.com/critically acclaimed network, where we have original podcasts exclusive to the Patreon. There's a podcast dedicated entirely to the Step Up movies. There's a podcast dedicated to every single film ever nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Not just the winners, the nominees as well. We have a podcast that's dedicated to every single episode of Star Trek in order. We just started Star Trek Next Generation Season 3. So if you sign up now, there's already a back catalog of well over 100 episodes.
Jeez.
And we do commentary tracks, we do Discord hangouts, we do trivia nights with our patrons. It's a lot. So
you still get to do trivia then?
I do get to do a bit of trivia, yeah. And we've actually started allowing some of our patrons to host the trivia night. So I get to compete as well. Which is a lot of fun. So we just had a trivia night where we hosted by one of our patrons where they wanted to focus more on international movies. And that was really, really fun. We did one in July where the focus was on television, which is actually not my field. Like I know some, but like I've never seen Better Call Saul. I'm sorry. So like there's
Breaking Bad. So
there you go. Like there's a ton of TV out there. And who has the time? So
right.
Yeah, so that was fun as well. And we'll have a horror match for patrons up in October, obviously, and other things as well. So that's all going on over at patreon.com/critically acclaimed network, in addition to the soaps at patreon.com/saltcatsoap. I think that's it.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you could join me on it. So you don't have any last words for the fans or the audience?
I will say this. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for the Schmodown. And if you enjoyed the competitors at the Schmodown, I encourage you, please make sure you seek out what they're doing beyond that, because many of them, all of them really are super duper talented. Not all of them have their own shows or are trying to do that, but show your support, because we all just lost a thing that we really, really care about. And it was something that we put our hearts and souls into. And we want to come up with spaces, places, programs, whatever we can do to sort of fill that void and also invite you into it. So if there's a competitor you like, find them on social media, see if they're doing any other projects, support them however you can, because we miss you. And we're going to miss seeing you in the chats and the Reddit, in the Facebook group. We're going to miss it a lot. So please, if not me, support whoever you can, because there's wonderful people who made this wonderful show, and I'm honored to have been a part of it.
Thank you for joining me on this.
Thank you.
Yeah, but you can find plenty of them on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter as well. I'll be doing this. Hopefully, I'm getting back into more of a regular schedule with the show. That is my plan.
A pain I know all too well. I know all too well.
You start off with the best of intentions and then think life happens.
The older you get, the more responsibilities you have, and it's harder to get that work ethic. We're trained too often, I think, in the modern world to treat like being a workaholic as a good thing. And it's not. So we have to find the balance, and sometimes it's tricky. So you're doing great. And thank you so much for having me on your show. And to Ben, because I didn't say it enough, growl, growl.
Yes.
I'm going to miss growl, growl.
Oh my gosh.
Nothing made me happier than like there are a couple of times we would like go to like a comic book convention and we do a panel or something like that, and I would say like it was like being in church. I would just go up there and I'd say growl growl, and they would be like, and growl growl to you as well, like everyone in unison.
It's so good.
I remember the first time I did that, Christian was like, "What the hell is happening?"
No.
He had no idea
Yeah,
it had
but
gone that
became a
far.
thing.
It did. I was very happy about it. It's nice
Yeah.
to have a catchphrase. I never had one before.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, who doesn't want one? Especially one that everyone just without you even having to prompt it as well. Because as soon as I
Mm.
tweeted it out, people were all growl growl, and I was like, there we go.
Yeah, that was a hoot.
I was thinking about putting in the tweet, but I knew others would do it for me. So I was like, I'm running out of characters here. I need to get what I want to
Damn
say
you,
out.
Twitter!
I know, right? I've got so many things to say and not enough characters to say it in.
You know, if you use the alt text in like when you're putting in pictures and gifs and stuff, you should describe them because that's what they're here for. It's for like people who can't necessarily see them; they can hear what's in them.
Oh.
But they give you so much more space, and you can just add a little bit more if you want. You can just throw that in there. I find that's really helpful.
Oh, well, there we go. People are gonna
Yeah.
get so sick of me. I'm gonna have more things to say now.
There you go.
Well, thanks to the fans for watching and joining us. And you can catch me on the next one. I'm hoping to have Frank Janish himself on here to
Ooh.
talk about.
He
the
knows where the
showdown, right?
skeletons are buried. That's a good one.
Oh, and that's the thing is he's like, well, we're going to be drinking. I'm like, well, that's going to end
Ooh.
interestingly. So if
I'm
you
gonna
want
have
to
to watch
find
that
out,
one.
if
I'm
you
gonna
want
have
to find
watch
out
that
some
one.
secrets, next weekend.
Yikes!
Next Saturday night, I have Frank Janish on. This should be very interesting. But
That
thank
should
you
be
once
fun.
again for joining me,
Thank you.
Viz. And thank you guys for tuning in. And I'll see you hopefully next week. We'll see how that one goes.
Thank you again. This has been
Bye.
wonderful. Thank you.
Bye.